friends. Microphone. Lovely microphone. Thank you, Pammy Sue and Arthur. Still about €50 short, but it's okay. Sorry, it's not video. We'll get that rectified in a few days. I woke up with something in my mind called the girl who knew too much. And then I talked a little bit with somebody online, an online friend, about the curse of seeing behind the veil. And how I used to, as a very young child, wish I couldn't see behind the veil, and kind of envy friends that lived simply and just lived simply. I remember one friend in particular, also called Angela, and despite coming from a broken home, very violent father, brave Catholic mother who dared to separate when it, in the 60s when it wasn't kosher, and raised her 4 children on her own. But despite that dysfunctional background and poverty, my friend Angela went on to what looked like a normal life. So, she met a boy, she got a factory job, he worked in a factory, they got married, they had children, they had holidays. And I perceived that as normal. And I used to think, why can't my life be normal? And based on MK Ultra and the book that needs to be written, the first 8 years, I've written some of it. Maybe it doesn't need to be written. If there were a good, dedicated ghostwriter out there, there's so much information I've disclosed over the years. I should have tagged them all survivor stories, and then somebody could make them chronological and create a trilogy, but who knows? Who cares is the question. I'm feeling introspective and philosophical, and like many people, probably in a fog of depression. But an enduring memory I have is of being paralyzed from the neck down. I kind of visualized it as being buried in sand with a fishbowl over my head so that I could see everything going on around me, but I couldn't communicate. So the ability to see and observe became heightened. Now, this, I suspect, was connected to, no consent medical experiments, MK Ultra in the military, etc., where that was deliberately done to heighten the different senses. So I have this goldfish bowl peering out sensation of being able to observe everything around me and see things and wonder why other people weren't seeing them. And it haunts me to this day, because even if it was programming for, spying or, unawares data gathering or infiltration, even if whatever mad scientist intention behind it, the programming, both in the first 5 years spent mostly in hospitals, military hospitals, and then being told up until 12 years of age that I couldn't exert myself because I was a sickly child. So I wasn't allowed to play or do sports or exert myself, with kind of flimsy evidence, until at 11 or 12, I finally rebelled and said, I don't care if I die. I don't, I want to play. I want to do football. I want to join Melksham Ladies Football Club. I want to do hockey. I want to do karate. I want to do netball. I want to do ballet. I want to do. I'm not staying bedbound anymore with the story that you told me that I might die. Um, and so I broke forth into a counteractive, risk-taking, manic, physical adrenaline junkie. Trying to make up for lost time, I suppose, those first 12 years. So the first 8 years are drug muddied, and probably a lot longer than that. But yeah, that enduring memory of being buried up to the neck and in a glass bowl and being able to see outside and maybe not be seen. I'm not sure if I was seen, but just wondering. And it feels like that at the moment, observing the world and wondering, why are people not seeing this? And even to make it contemporary, the Roe v. Wade overturn. Yes, I wish I could be amongst the innocents that rejoice. And I do rejoice. I do rejoice that some babies will be saved. 68 million killed in utero in America, 330 million in China with the one child per family law that they had. And all the, I personally had a friend who had 7 abortions, traveled from Ireland to England 7 times for an abortion before going on to have 3 children. And she fell out with me over the abortion referendum in Ireland, which I believe was fixed, because I don't hate her. She's a survivor, but I hate the normalization of killing babies, right? At any stage from conception, really, but right up until they're born or afterwards. Infanticide as authorized by Obama, and now looking to be extended to 28 days old. Up until 28 days old, a baby can be left to die, and that be normalized. So, but at the same time, as I get the superficial rejoicing of Roe v. Wade overturned, it smells like a psyop from the beginning. I've watched bits and pieces where I think the lady claimed rape in order to get a late-term abortion, and then years later became a Christian and repented and said, I wasn't raped. I was told to say that so I could get the late-term abortion and get it set into law as a precedent. And then she said, oh, the church I confided in took advantage of me and paraded me everywhere for their own agenda. And so it was a mess. And but I just feel that, again, I see behind the veil as this gets released, overturned at this moment in time. And the midterm elections coming up in America in November. And just one playbook after another being rolled out. We've had the George Floyd BLM playbook, and then we've had the police brutality playbook, and we've had the Muslim invasion playbook, and we've had the Jewish mafia playbook. There's truth in all these things, but it's like a grand wizard with his hand on the nuclear button. And then we've got Kaliningrad and Russia, and London will be the first nuked, and NATO and proxy wars and inflated petrol. It's craziness. It's craziness. So I can't share in the innocence, and in order to have a sense of belonging, it's preferable to tie your mast or tie your flag to a mast and then get behind that and whoop, whoop. Oh, isn't that great? And that's why a lot of people do that, and they support charlatans and they follow narratives that make no sense, and they, because of the human urge to belong. And sometimes I pacify myself and say, look, stop looking behind the veil, even seeing behind the veil. You know, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Let's just have forbearance and forgive one another's shortcomings in order to belong and identify. Um, but that only lasts a season. I can't condone idolatry. I can't condone the cult of personality. I can't condone financial impropriety. I can't condone broken integrity, even though, you know, I'm driven very much to inward reflection because it starts with us. But the alienation is almost a success from a MK Ultra experiment from conception point of view, in as much as you know, the preference to see and tell, not necessarily, I don't even have such a compulsion to tell, but to see and be honest about hypocrisy and lies. Yeah. So, yeah, the curse of seeing behind the veil. And I'm looking for the breakthrough that takes you beyond, you know, the Ecclesiastes, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. I'm looking for the breakthrough. Obviously, we all have a duty to do our own inventory, take our own inventory and self-reflect, but also, it's raining now. Oh, sugar, I have to walk the dog in the rain. But also, I do feel a duty to be my brother's keeper or my sister's keeper or the children's, like, to sound the alarm. And that's a thin line to walk, you know. There's the self-reflection, and then there's the social conscience and responsibility, you know, that you cannot observe an injustice or an atrocity and look the other way, to meditate on your own navel, you know, or self-flagellate. You know, self-loathing, I've said, is, you know, the curse of the last couple of, you know, at least the last couple of generations. So I've had this sense of really coming to grips with codependence, in as much as there's a thing, I'm just free streaming here. There's a thing I remember where you put a penny in a machine and the donkey, it's quite gross really, and with hindsight it was programming, but you put a penny in a machine and a donkey poops out a chocolate penny. You know, those ones that used to be on the Christmas tree. My older sister used to steal them all before Christmas Day, with, you know, no matter what. She couldn't help it. She was a bit of a kleptomaniac. You know, she would find the presents and open them, you know, open a tiny corner enough to see what they were. Whereas I would like the surprise, you know, and then be disappointed because it wasn't really, you know. I remember one Christmas asking for a flamenco dress. We were living in Gibraltar, and my sister Fiona and I were attending flamenco classes in Loreto Convent, Gibraltar, after school, where most of the children were Gibraltarian. But we went to flamenco classes, and all the little girls had flamenco dresses except for Fiona and I. So I asked with an earnest child's heart, if I could have a flamenco dress for Christmas. And then my mother said, you have to write a second choice just in case Father Christmas can't bring you what you want. She was used to being in a marriage of financial abuse and control. Or she was complicit and part of it. There's truth in both of that. But I remember on Christmas Day, no flamenco dress, just a Tressie doll with an extendable ponytail. And I was so disappointed. I pulled the ponytail out and put the doll and severed ponytail down the rubbish chute of our 3rd floor apartment on North Front in Gibraltar. So just everything. And it's no good just saying this is down to too much research or too much exposure to negativity. You can't unsee what you've seen. And I remember saying to one of the managers at BCCI in the late 70s, I remember saying to him, I can't do small talk. And he said, there's much to be said for small talk. And so it's like you've crossed the line into being willing to see the truth, and you can't cross back unless when I observe people trying to cross back, it saddens me. It's like, you coward, you saw the truth and then you shut your eyes again. And Bob Smith, Christian traveler online, I saw you do that. I think I did. You got really brave. You called out Dickie Higgy. You put a bounty on Apollo's head, and then you apologized and said you shouldn't have got involved in things that weren't your business. Well, if anything is anybody else's business, it's surely sexual predators and child rapists, child groomers, child abusers. And this is the thing I find, is that, we all have our own voice, and, fighting with adults is tedious to me, but fighting for the voiceless is something I feel everybody has a social duty to do. And I don't like physical fighting. I had so much violence in my childhood. I am averse to it in adulthood. But certainly fighting for a voice. I suppose that's the enduring image for today, and I will try and make a video every day. I've got a narrative in my head trying to make me give up. But everything is an illusion, and everybody has a voice and a choice. And I just accept my lot, that I cannot pretend to be somebody, even though I try for seasons, I try for short periods of time to say, okay, I will share in the illusion. Let's pretend everything's okay. Let's pretend everything's hunky-dory. Let's pretend everything's just normal. But I can't do it. I can't sustain it, because it's too much dividing of a front and then what's really going on in your head. So that's it for today. It's pouring with rain. I have to walk the dog and write a couple of freedom of information demands. I need to nail this down, because multiple attempts I've made to get my medical records have been fogged over. And one of the biggest tools against survivors is silence. I remember it used to be called being sent to Coventry. I don't know why Coventry got selected for that term, but being met with silence is a form of abuse. It's ignore them, they'll go away. That can be true for really bad people, but when it's a weapon used against survivors and whistleblowers, it's a form of abuse. It's a form of further trauma. I had an experience recently, and I'm talking vaguely, even though being monitored. I had an experience recently, and I will make an analogy of what it was like. So the analogy is, imagine as a journalist, I said to somebody in authority, I've tracked down a Nazi war criminal in Argentina, and I want to interview him. Will you ensure my safety? And so this person in authority says, yes, we'll give you safe passage to confront this Nazi war criminal. And then they come in and they say, oh, this Nazi war criminal's very old and very vulnerable. And right, so we're going to protect him. Now, you just be careful that you don't abuse him in your interviewing skills or your interactions or your reactions. And so then, as the journalist who said, I found a Nazi war criminal, will you ensure my safety while I go in? You find yourself regarded as the criminal, and you find the genocidal monster labeled as vulnerable. So sorry for the riddles. I do find YouTube is speaking more and more in riddles, and part of the joy of YouTube was the ability to both listen and speak completely frankly. And as this has been more and more censored, and people are self-censoring themselves, and they're aware that police and intelligence services and trolls and perps and all sorts are monitoring, the truth is getting strangled. And I spoke to somebody about feeling that the life was being squeezed out of me. And she identified that immediately and reminded me that that is a spirit of Python. So you research those snakes that will swallow a human being whole and then squeeze the life out of them and spend months digesting them. And that's fairly graphic description of the spirit of Python. So if you feel like the life is being squeezed out of you from every corner, every angle, on every front, do some research on the spirit of Python and rebuke it and bind it, come alongside another believer and cast it out to dry lands in Jesus' name. And as I say, the codependence of, that was the thing I was trying to say about, you put a penny in the donkey and it spits out a chocolate through its arse, which is horrific programming given the fecal obsession of the likes of Marina Abramovic and other ritual abuse practitioners, but who was to know back then? But that's the point, is that I feel that any subject, any person can interact with me, and then a whole memory bank will be accessed in my mind, and I can just bring forth information. And without that stimulus, or without those triggers, I'm not an MK Ultra survivor who has experienced being triggered by codes or colors or blatant triggering, nor am I an SRA survivor that remembers cloaks or rituals, but I do remember being hunted, and I do remember being drugged, and I do remember being abused. But this sense of only being able to bring forth truth when somebody presses a button or triggers a behavior or triggers an altar, yes, I experienced that, not in this movie Hollywood type way where someone phones you and says, 666 or something. No, but one memory definitely is that Rupert Quaintance, in the month he stayed in my apartment in Lanzarote, platonically in the guest room, but he triggered sex kitten programming me for sure, and deliberately, in my opinion, whether consciously or not, whether he was romance scamming me because I had some money or for whatever reason, but he daily triggered sex kitten programming in me. And of course, then I embarrassed myself, not hugely. I mean, he sent me, he asked me for arse pics when he was, send me photos of your arse, what's your, whatever, from Amsterdam, and then just said, oh, I was drunk. Sorry, I didn't mean that. The police in his court case apparently took 2 weeks to go over 5,000 messages between Rupert and I. It was not a case of a cougar, assaulting a young 38-year-old. There was definitely a sense of him being sent in and triggering programming, so and family members can trigger a compliant child in me. Churches can trigger a naive submission. Things can be triggered. There's no doubt about that. But as I'm in this phase with less stimulus and more introspection, I want to find a balance between recovering as many memories as I can and being at peace with those that I cannot fully piece together, and balance that with what was intended as I believe was intended as a spying tool, was this ability to information gather and to see behind the veil, to memorize things, to join dots, to see discrepancies, to see anomalies. I have dedicated that to God and to good. And I still sometimes find it's a burden. It's a loss of innocence. It's a heavy yoke, but I just remind myself that Jesus said, take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Cast your burdens onto Jesus, for he cares for you. So that's it. That's just some MK Ultra from the heart. And obviously when I interact with others, especially those that are either fellow survivors or I don't know, experienced in some of what I'm talking about, and I'm trying not to be an academic snob, because I relate to real people as well, hugely. But that's where you can access my files. But I feel like I'm just a filing cabinet, and put a penny in the donkey and it'll spit out a chocolate coin. There is still that element. There are subjects that can be brought up and my brain just goes, oh, I know about that. Boom, 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 boom. But it can still leave an emptiness. Have a blessed day. I do believe Roe v. Wade, although it's good news, is I also believe there's a double agenda, like the George Floyd BLM, you know, the anti-Semitic thing, the defund the police thing. I do believe it's another part of the playbook to cause civil unrest, and for the Democrats to ride in on a white horse in November, saying, "Oh, vote for us, and we'll correct all this. You know, we'll reverse all this." My stance on abortion is very clear. I don't judge, but I do believe that it's murder, and that countries have, nations, humanity has blood on their hands, hugely so. Hugely, hugely, hugely so. We have been so mind controlled and desensitized that for us to consider it reproductive health care or planned parenthood, as opposed to getting pregnant because you slept with somebody carelessly, or even the worst event, you get raped, but the child is innocent of that. And like Andre Bocelli, the internationally renowned opera singer, was a child of rape. Anyway, let me not pontificate, but just let me say that I can't stand in the paradigm left-wing, right-wing, pro-life, pro-choice, because I see behind the veil, and there's more to this than meets the eye. We apparently stand on the brink with nuclear war, more possible than it ever was in the 60s. And corruption in government and globalism off the charts, manufactured crises and depopulation. One would do well to have some introspective time and get right with Jesus, get right with God, which is a journey of love. It's not a journey of condemnation. It's to own up to our own sins and to embrace the one that said, "I'll stand in the gap for you, and I'll take you back to your Father, your Creator, your godly heavenly Father, for eternity." God bless, guys. Sorry if this is a bit dark, but I'm just getting a sense that either get real, get true, or get off the public arena. Check the links, and if you can support me in any way, I would appreciate that. There's a GoFundMe link in the description.